Picture it, the golden age of Hollywood. The studio gates were pearly, the Klieg lights were divine. The stars were gods. They were crafted, molded, presented to the adoring public as paragons of beauty and talent. We worshipped at their celluloid altars, mesmerized by flickering images of perfection. They were the dream, the aspiration, the very definition of glamour. But behind the velvet curtains and the blinding flashbulbs, a different story was being written, of shadow. This was a battlefield glittering and treacherous. To etch your name into the zeitgeist, you had to want it more than love, more than peace, more than self. Ambition became hunger. The dream had a price, paid in sweat and scandal. Tonight, we pull back the curtain. Let's begin with the Titan, the ultimate survivor, the woman who refused to fade away, Joan Crawford. In a town built on fleeting beauty, she was a permanent fixture, a force of nature who clawed her way through 5 decades of Hollywood. Her career wasn't just long, it was a masterclass in sheer, indomitable will. Born Lucille Le Sueur, a name she loathed for sounding like sewer, she came from a childhood of instability that forged a desperate ambition. When MGM held a public contest to rename her, Joan Crawford was born. She knew identity was a costume, and she'd wear any to escape poverty and obscurity. She danced out of the chorus line, a flapper with burning eyes and a hunger no success could satisfy. At MGM, surrounded by goddesses like Greta Garbo, she wasn't the biggest star or the most beautiful, but she made one thing clear: no one would outwork her. She studied rivals relentlessly, dissecting their performances, looks, and publicity. But her true genius was cultivating her audience. She answered every letter, building a loyal army of devotees. It was strategy, warfare, an empire built one signed photograph at a time. Her reinventions were legendary, flapper to working-class heroine. With designer Adrian, she sculpted her iconic silhouette. The padded power shoulders became her trademark. She sculpted her face, the severe mouth, the strong brows. This wasn't fashion, it was armor. The feud with Bette Davis was glorious and venomous. By the 1940s, MGM declared her box office poison. For anyone else, it was the end. For Crawford, it was war. She clawed for and won the Oscar she craved. The sickbed acceptance, claiming illness to steal headlines, was pure Crawford theater. She leaked stories and staged photo ops, always maintaining control. Her body, charm, and intellect were weapons for the best scripts, directors, and lighting. Her obsessive cleanliness, the plastic slipcovers on her furniture, was about preserving the pristine, untouchable illusion. Later, when glamorous roles dried up, she embraced B-horrors and William Castle's gimmicks. Better notorious than nobody. She chose survival. Ultimately, her greatest creation was herself, a monstrously beautiful creature of will. She clawed to the pinnacle and clung there with bloodied fingernails. If Joan Crawford was will made flesh, Judy Garland was a sacrifice to the system. A lamb offered up to the insatiable gods of Hollywood, who demanded not just talent, but total submission. Born Frances Gumm, she was pushed on stage by a mother who saw a golden ticket, not a child. The pressure began almost from the cradle, a tiny performer already carrying the weight of her family's dreams. At 13, she signed with MGM and ceased to be a person. She was christened Judy Garland and became a product, a piece of studio property to be molded and monetized by studio head Louis B. Mayer. The bosses called her their little hunchback, not a glamour girl like Lana or Hetty. This constant criticism was a tool of control designed to chip away at her self-worth, making her more pliable. They capped her teeth, used rubber discs to reshape her nose, and starved her for the camera, instilling a lifelong battle with body image. Meals were policed with ruthless efficiency. Chicken soup, black coffee, and cigarettes to suppress her appetite. Little else was permitted. To keep up with grueling workdays, the studio prescribed a chemical solution: amphetamines to wake, barbiturates to sleep. Her surrogate parent was also her dealer, initiating a dependency that would haunt her for life. Dorothy, the ultimate symbol of innocence, was played by a girl fueled by studio-mandated uppers and downers. The journey over the rainbow was a chemical illusion. The vibrant, technicolor magic of Oz stood on a foundation of systematic abuse. The fantasy on screen was built on a dark, hidden reality. The message from the studio was relentless, echoing in her mind: "You are fat, unattractive, replaceable." This psychological warfare became her inner critic. Her stardom became a gilded cage of impossible expectations and suffocating control. The public adored Judy, but Frances was suffocating inside. She danced to please the unpleasable: the studio heads, the critics, the audience. Every performance was a desperate plea for acceptance. Her personal life was just as tightly controlled. When she became pregnant, the studio and her mother forced her into multiple abortions to protect the cash flow, not the child. In the cold calculus of Hollywood, her womb was a liability to the business of movies. Her body was not her own. The addiction born on the backlot became her lifelong crutch, the only tool she'd been given to cope with the immense pressure: anxiety, self-doubt, exhaustion. She began to unravel, publicly, under a spotlight that was burning her alive. The press labeled her unreliable, a diva. But she wasn't a diva. She was a woman drowning in the trauma the system itself had created. In 1950, after 15 years, MGM terminated her contract. She was fired by the only home she knew, cast out from the cage that had built and broken her. But she reinvented herself on stage, where the connection with a live audience hit like lightning. Here there was no character to hide behind. She poured her pain into song, every night. The Man That Got Away wasn't just a performance. It was a raw, visceral confession. And she paid for it. Emotionally, physically. The nightly exorcism of her demons left her drained, pushing her further into addiction. She cycled through 5 tumultuous marriages, searching for a stability that fame and trauma made impossible. Despite earning millions, she was plagued by financial woes, a human cash register, trapped in a cycle of work just to stay afloat, to keep earning, to keep being Judy. The demand was relentless, the pressure never-ending. She transformed a lifetime of suffering into transcendent art at an unspeakable and ultimately fatal cost. A beautiful, tragic bird who sang her loveliest songs before the fall. The end, at age 47, was the inevitable conclusion to a life lived for a dream that demanded too high a price. Now, the swashbuckler who blurred screen and scandal, Errol Flynn. He didn't just play a hero, he embodied a dangerous new stardom. He didn't chase fame, he conquered it, using it as a license for a hedonism that shocked even 1930s Hollywood. He crafted the adventurer myth before cameras ever rolled, spinning tales from a youth spent in the wilds of New Guinea. Gold prospector, overseer, patrol officer. Part truth, part magnificent fiction he sold to the studios. He wasn't playing Captain Blood. He was announcing he was Captain Blood, a last-minute replacement who became an overnight sensation. He bought the Zaka, a schooner that became his floating kingdom of debauchery. Wild parties, endless women, and prodigious drinking. Scandal didn't hurt him. It fueled him, polishing his rebellious image with every headline. He became the handsome bad boy the world loved to watch misbehave, a thrilling escape. Then came the 1942 statutory rape trial, a media circus that threatened to end his career. The trial was so notorious it gave birth to a new phrase for effortless conquest. In like Flynn, any other star would be ruined, but Flynn charmed the all-female jury and was acquitted. His popularity soared. He reinforced the cad persona with crude pranks as the relentless lifestyle began to take its toll. Pleasure exacted a heavy price, a daily diet of morphine for chronic pain, cocaine, and oceans of gin. The dashing hero bloated, lines were forgotten, the once brilliant talent dimmed under the haze. His home, with its infamous two-way mirrors, became a den of voyeurism, trapped by his own persona. He turned confession into branding, publishing his scandalous autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways. Dead at 50 from a massive heart attack, he had quite literally lived himself to death. Fame consumed him, and he smiled as it did, a willing sacrifice to his own myth. The public didn't look away. They leaned in, captivated by the beautiful and the damned. And finally the queen, the defiant one, Bette Davis. She didn't want love, she wanted respect. Told she had no sex appeal, dismissed, underestimated, the fire lit. At Warner Brothers, she carved complicated, often unlikable women, and made them mesmerizing. The contract system was a prison. She sued the studio, called it slavery, fled to England to fight. She lost on paper, won in legacy. Respect followed. Her weapon was confrontation, with directors, producers, co-stars, Jack Warner himself. The Crawford feud exploded, accidents, taunts, and public humiliations. She chose truth over prettiness, dared to be grotesque in pursuit of character. Rivals were territory to conquer. When roles thinned, she placed a public want ad. Bold, defiant, a little desperate. A fighter to the end. She didn't chase fame by being agreeable. She fought for the work, and won. So there you have it. The survivor, Joan Crawford. The sacrifice, Judy Garland. The scoundrel, Errol Flynn. The soldier, Bette Davis. 4 legends, 4 paths. 1 hunger for fame. Immortal on film, at immense personal cost. Health, happiness, sometimes their very souls. Not just stars, sacrifices on the altar of adoration. Ambition was fuel and poison. It made them great. It broke them. They clawed. They fought. They seduced. They screamed. Behind every perfect close-up is imperfect humanity. A desperate need to be seen, to be remembered. Which story shocked you most? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe for more dark tales from the Dream Factory. There are more ghosts waiting.